Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Today, what I wanted to speak on comes from me speaking with someone on Facebook. He's by all standards, he's a first dayer. He's Christian all the way, and he came to me and asked about how is the law still applied. And I believe the Father gave me some pretty good revelation, I'd have to say, on it. Before I get started, though, the reason for this message really is not besides for that, but to help remind us, and also, well, I'm sure we all know some people that are in the quote-unquote Christian faith. So maybe we can help them, guide them. Because as me personally that came out of the Christian church, I have a very big heart for them. Because I know for so long that I was deceived, just like so many people were. And I just want to do everything that I feel the Father has put in my heart to try to help them understand where we come from as believers and as ones that try to walk in complete obedience to the Father and walk as our Messiah walked on earth. No Christian will ever say that, Yeshua is not our example. They will 100% agree. But I do feel that they limit that example. They don't embrace the fullness of who our Messiah is. So with that being said, I do want us to remember one thing that probably will help them is in Malachi 3:6, we know that Yahweh does not change. We know that, and we even have like Hebrews 13:8 as well verifies. There's that second witness that our Messiah does not change, and that the Father does not change. We also know from 2 Peter chapter 3 from 15 to 17. I'm not reading this one, but we know that they have a tendency to twist Paul's scriptures, and they twist to their own destruction. They don't realize that, for one, Paul was a second-generation Pharisee, so they don't put themselves in the mind of what he knew. So unlearned will do that. But I've come to the realization, I believe the Father placed on me, that the Torah, the instructions, were basically in three categories. To sum it up, make it easy. Three categories. Category one is general instruction, basically. It's for all of us, every person. We know we're not supposed to steal. We know we are supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. And those are the guidelines of the general instructions. Then there's the governing instructions, which is more for a law for a country. As we in the United States have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, Israel then had the Torah. They had their right rulings. If you steal, if there's a conflict between brothers, you go to the judges, you go such and so forth. And then the last one, of course, is the priestly instructions. And what I'm going to attempt to do today with the help of the Ruach is to explain all three and then show how every single one is still applied today. First, I'm going to discuss the governing laws. So if you mind turning with me to Exodus 19. And we're going to start in verse 4 when Yahweh is speaking to Moses, and he says, "You have seen what I did to the Mitzrites, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. And before I go continue, we're going to get into where it says, and in verse 5, and now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. What we need to understand is that is our covenant. If you obey me, I will take you as my people. And then, of course, we know later on that the people said, I do, if you will. And so it comes to government. They needed rules. They needed to know how to govern themselves as people, as a nation. So that's where we see in Exodus chapter 24, starting with the first couple verses. And then Moshe, he said, come up to Yahweh, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and you shall bow yourselves from a distance. But Moshe shall draw near to Yahweh by himself, and let them not draw near, not let the people go up with him. And I feel in this first verse that we get a glimpse of the ruling authority of the governing body of the nation at that time to start. We obviously know Moses was called, he was the head, if we will, because Yahweh used him to lead Israel out of Egypt. And then we see with the priesthood and then the elders. So we see a shadow of who has authority in the nation of Israel. And again, we will go to, skip down here till verse 2. We're going to stay in the same chapter, and we are going to go to the 12th verse. And Yahweh said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain, and wait there while I give you tablets of stone and the Torah and the command which I have written to teach them. So as we see here, the commandments and the right rulings and everything was given to Moses. For him, how I understand, is for him to teach him. So the priesthood know, and for the elders to know, so that from there, the elders and the priesthood can teach everyone else. And so we have, and then in Deuteronomy, I'm going to skip over to Deuteronomy chapter 17. And we are going to go to verse 8. Give me a second to get there. And here this is we see the kind of the confirmation of the ruling class of Israel in a way, we'll say, because in verse 8 of chapter 17 in Deuteronomy, when any matter arises which is too hard for you to judge, between blood and blood, between plea and plea, and between stroke and stroke, matters of strife within your gates, then you shall rise up and go to the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses, and shall come to the priests, the Levites, and the judge who is in those days, and shall inquire, and shall declare to you the word of right ruling. Just like we go to judges and magistrates for our authority for the right ruling of anything, we see that is the exact same case for Israel. So we see that, and there's one more thing I wanted to touch on here as well, because we see that, and then we also see in the hint down here, once they actually got into the land, Yahweh says, when you come into the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, I'm in the 14th verse of chapter 17 in Deuteronomy, is giving you, and shall possess it and shall dwell in it, and you shall say, let me appoint a king over me like all the Gentiles that are around me. You shall certainly appoint a king over, or sovereign over you, whom Yahweh your Elohim shall choose. Appoint a sovereign over you and from among your brothers. You are not allowed to appoint a foreigner over you who is not your brother. Now we just on a side note on that, to get everyone thinking and showing more so of Yahweh does not change. And as he says, he will choose. Now, as we can see from Scripture, Saul, the first king, was anointed by a prophet. David, anointed by a prophet to be king. And then we're going to go all the way fast forward to show that even our righteous king, our Messiah, Yeshua, was anointed by John the Baptist, which, as we know later on, that he had the spirit of a prophet, spirit of Eliyahu within him. So as we see, the pattern still stays consistent. Yahweh chooses his people, he chose his king, and he sent his prophets to anoint that ruling authority over his people. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to my second category, which is the general instructions, and I kind of covered it briefly a little bit because we see that the covenant was given from Exodus 19 that, we obey, we are his people, and that is our covenant. We can go in a little more detail in Deuteronomy 4, and in that very first few verses, it says, and now, Yisrael, listen to the laws and the right rulings which I am teaching you to do, so that you live. So this is how we shall live. I feel not only just as we live in a sense of live and die, but also in the sense of how you live, how we are supposed to live our life every single day. We are supposed to live our life according to the Torah. As it is written, it says, the Torah is for our righteousness. You have to do righteousness. I know coming out of the Christian church, we were kind of given the righteousness of Yeshua. We don't have to do nothing. It's all under him, which I do understand we are not made perfect. We cannot work our way to salvation. But you can't say you believe in Yeshua and you follow Yeshua, but you'll eat pork. Or you'll go worship on Sunday, which is a day that throughout history was a pagan holiday. And as I had talked to someone this morning, they kind of tried to demonize me in a way, because they were saying, well, you're basically saying everybody that goes to hell, or everyone that goes to church on Sunday is going to go to hell. And I said, that's not my job to condemn. That's not what I do. I am to teach what I see the scriptures say. Hallelujah. And the fact is that if you're okay with Sunday worship, if you're okay with eating unclean, why would the Yahweh have destroyed the Israelites at Mount Sinai with the golden calf? Because they said that golden calf was Yahweh. They were changing their days. They said, tomorrow we'll do a feast, declare it to Yahweh. This is our golden calf. It doesn't make sense to me, because we know, as I'll go back to this a lot, Malachi 3:6, Yahweh does not change. He stays consistent, the same. So, and he says, do not worship me as these nations worship their idols. So when you are going on days that were set up for pagans, you are worshiping and trying to mask mask Yahweh, mask Yeshua with that, you are worshiping Yahweh and Yeshua directly as he said not to do.
That's right.
So you can't, it's either one or the other. And if you're going to say that, oh, he knows my heart, well, there's a verse in Jeremiah that I know, he says, yes, I know your hearts. They're sick and desperately wicked. So trusting your heart, I wouldn't recommend it. But needless to say, I got a little bit off topic there, but let's see where we're at. So we know we can't worship, we can't do things that the other nations did and say that we are serving, because at that point we are being hypocritical, and at that point we are also being rebellious, because out of convenience we want to do it how we want to do it. We don't want to do it how he said. And I ended my conversation with that person saying, I'm not judging. You can do as you want. If you want to stick with traditions of men, you can do that. You can choose life or choose death. But I would rather be in line with what the scriptures say than to be in line with what a Roman emperor declared. Left it at that. But and as we were going to continue on in Deuteronomy 4, it says, so that I'm teaching you to do so that you live, and shall go in and possess the land which Yahweh Elohim of your fathers is giving you. Do not add to the word which I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim which I am commanding you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like for our Christian brothers and sisters to understand that second verse. Do not add to and do not take away. So when you say that none of the law is apparent, none of the law matters, you are taking away from the law, which we are told not only here in Deuteronomy not to do, but we are also told in Revelation not to do. So again, when you see the scriptures and you go, it's really a battle of your religion and what the book says. We have, a lot of people don't understand that the two really don't go together. You have religion, which is if you look up the actual meaning of the word religion, it means bondage. And we know that our Father is free. Everything about the Father is free. So that in itself shows the contradiction between religion and the scriptures. And quite frankly, a lot of religion does not do what the Father says. So we see that, and just so for we know what the covenant was. I touched on that. I also want to touch a little bit on. We'll stay in the same chapter in Deuteronomy 4, but we'll jump down to the 23rd verse, and it says, guard yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yahweh, your Elohim, which he made with you. And then right here, we're going to hear, from what I'm reading in scriptures, this is one of the ways you break covenant. This is how you break the covenant, is make for yourselves a carved image of any likeness of Yahweh, your Elohim, as commanded you. So we see the cross in a Sunday church. We see a picture of, I'm just going to call it how it is Caesar Borgia. If you do your research and look up that image, you will see where that comes from. So we have a man image, we have a cross, and I can remember distinctly in the beginning of the instructions, we are told to not make an image, not worship, bow down to the image of anything in the heavens above, anything on the earth beneath, and anything in the water beneath that. So I think the Father pretty much covered every single thing imaginable. We are not to make an image or worship. It's just what I see. I could be wrong. But so that tells me that no, we're not supposed to have any of that. So there is your idolatry in the Christian church that we're not supposed to have, which is, it's a system I don't want to sound like I'm attacking Christians, but I will boldly say that I attack a system of Christianity because it is lies mixed with truth. It is a system designed to trap people, deceive people into basically, as we read, in breaking covenant, because they have images. There's images there they worship, not knowingly. A lot of it is out of ignorance and not having the knowledge. But nonetheless, the system itself knows what it's doing. The founders of that system, they know what it was intended for. Right. They read the book, and yet they do opposite of it. Right. So we see that all over that system is designed to keep people deceived but breaking covenant, which is not good, and this is why I stand against that system. It's not against people, it is against the system. So we see that. And in Jeremiah 31, we're going to head to. I'm going to touch on it real quick, but we will come back to this verse, Jeremiah 31:31. Says, "See, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I shall make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day which I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant which they broke." I would have to say that covenant was instantly broken. Golden calf erection is what I'm going to say. And even though I was a husband to them, declares Yahweh. So he's saying that I'm going to make a new covenant with them. Before I get too much into that, though, I want to touch on my third category of the law, which is the priestly instructions. We get a glimpse of it, and I know I jump around a lot, so I apologize on that, but Exodus 30, and in verse 10, we just real quick with and Aaron shall make atonement upon its horns once a year with the blood of sin offering of atonement. Once a year, he makes atonement upon it throughout your generation. It is most set apart to Yahweh. So we see that Aaron, the high priest at that time, he is to make atonement with the blood, or for the sin offerings with blood. And we see so to tie that together, to tie what Aaron is to do, we'll go to Leviticus 16. And we'll start at the beginning. And Yahweh spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they drew near before Yahweh and died. And Yahweh said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron, your brother, not to come in at all times to the Kodesh place inside the veil, before the lid of atonement, which is on the ark, lest ye die. Because I appear in the cloud above the lid of atonement. With this, Aaron should come into the set-apart place with the blood of a young bull as a sin offering and of a ram as a burnt offering. He should put on the Kodesh linen, long shirt with the linen trousers on the flesh, and gird himself with the girdle, and be dressed with the linen turban. They are Kodesh garments, and he shall bathe his body in water and shall put them on." So you're seeing that Yahweh instructs the high priest, that he doesn't come in at all the times to the most holy place. He's to come with blood for a sin offering. And to atone for sins. So we're going to tie that to what Paul was, I believe it was Paul who wrote the book of Hebrews. I know it's a lot of. So we're going to go to Hebrews. And in the 5th chapter, read a couple verses here. It says, "For every priest taken from among men is appointed on behalf of men in matters related to Yahweh, to offer both gifts and offerings for sin, being able to have a measure of feeling for those not knowing and being led astray, since he himself also surrounded by weakness. And on account of this, he has to offer for sins as for the people, so also for himself." So we see that even the high priest, there was a process they had to go. I will touch on that. But they had to offer up for their sins first. As a high priest, he still had to atone for himself first before he could atone for the people. So when Yeshua arrives on the scene, we see that he is everything for the priestly instructions. Yeshua is the sacrifice, the offering. He is the atoning blood. He is also the high priest that goes into the most holy place to atone for our sins. So, to tie everything in together, in Hebrews 8, and we'll start at the first verse there. Now the summary of what we are saying is, we have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the greatness in the heavens, and who serves in the most holy place of the tent, which Yahweh put up and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and slaughterings, so it was also necessary for this one to have someone to offer. So we see that he as well stuck with the Torah, with the priestly instructions. He even offered, and as we said. And so in verse 11 of chapter 9 of Hebrews, "But Messiah, having become a high priest of the coming good, through the greater and more perfect tent not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, entered into the Kodesh place once for all, not with the blood of goats and calves, as they did in the past, but with his own blood, having obtained everlasting redemption." So, as we sit here today on this wonderful Sabbath, our high priest is at the right hand of the Father. He had offered once and for all his blood of atonement. He is our high priest and our king. So we see that in the priestly instructions, we have our high priest still atoning with his own blood once and for all. So there is our high priest instruction that is still going on to this day. Now, so to go back to Jeremiah 31, oh, I'm sorry about that. Actually, I wanted to cover something else real quick before I jump to Jeremiah. We'll go to 1 Corinthians 6. 19. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 9, Paul says, "Do you not know that the unrighteousness shall not inherit?" Excuse me, hold on here. I'm sorry, verse 19, not 9. Excuse me, 19. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Ruach HaKodesh, who is in you, which you have from Elohim, and you are not your own? And in Romans chapter 12, in that very first verse, of chapter 12 of Romans, it says, "I call upon you, therefore, brothers, through the compassion of Elohim, to present your bodies a living offering, set apart, well-pleasing to Elohim, your reasonable worship." And then Psalms 1, I'm not turning there, but to note Psalms 141 verses 1 through 2 and Revelations chapter 8 and verse 4 both show a connection between incense and prayer. So, to wrap it all up, or to put it all together, we are the temple of the Elohim. We are our temple. This body is a temple. So, our body is a temple. Our lives are supposed to be the sacrifice, the living sacrifice, sacrifices were conducted in the temple. Our prayers and our praises are like incense, which was also in the temple. We have our high priest that are in the temple that has our atoning blood, and he's in the most holy, interceding, just as Aaron and all the other high priests have done under the law. So we see the high priest is there. So we see that temple, those set of instructions we see are still there. We are supposed to live our lives in obedience. So as I said earlier, the general instructions for everybody, which still applies. You're not supposed to steal. You're not supposed to lie to people. You're not supposed to commit adultery. You're not supposed to do all these things. So to say that that is done away with, you're saying that it's okay to steal. It's okay to lie. It's okay to do all that. So we tie our temple and the temple services, which our lives are supposed to reflect being the temple, or our high priest is already in the heavens on the right hand of the Father. We know our general instructions we are supposed to live by. The governing instructions as far as stoning people and all that, like I said, those were our equivalent to our Bill of Rights. With some states, they have the death penalty for committing treasons and crimes. We see that if you kidnap, you murder, punishable by death crimes. No different than what we see back then to what we see today. So, in Jeremiah 31:31, as I said, we'll go back to that. I want to go, this will pretty much tie everything that I wanted to tie in, I think. Try to keep it short and sweet. And as we see the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I shall make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant I made with their fathers. We're going to skip down to the 33rd verse. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days. Now, I did notice something, that it is now one house. He says the house of Israel. And then previously, we see that Yahweh said Israel and Judah. Now it is one, because his covenant is, now it's Israel. After those days, declares Yahweh, I shall put my Torah, my law, my instructions in their inward parts and write it on their hearts. And I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Now, I had made a post one time on Facebook, and I think it was, and this is basically how I see it. They can agree, disagree, but it is what it is, and that is, the law is on our hearts, is written on our hearts. That is the new covenant ratified by the blood of our high priest. So if you are saying that the law is done away with, which is written on our hearts, you are saying that you have no heart. Your heart is done away with as well. And if your heart is done away with, then that poses a problem, because that means if you don't have a heart, you are dead. And if you are dead, that puts you in an even bigger position or in a bigger problem, because Yahweh is the Elohim of the living and not the Elohim of the dead. So if you are dead with no heart and no law, you have no Elohim, and that, my friends, puts you in a very, very big problem. That is pretty much how I have to say is, if the law is not in your heart, you have no heart, you're dead. So if you're dead, you are obviously not serving or with or connected to what is living. And what is living is Yahweh, our Elohim. That's pretty much all I have to say. And Yah bless and thank you.